The Syrians hoped at least to recapture the Golan Heights, taken from them in 1967. To keep Israel's troops tied down, they needed Egyptian forces to advance across the Sinai. But the Egyptians had their own plan. They intended to limit their advance to territory protected by their anti-aircraft missiles in Egypt.
Our missiles could protect us for up to 12 kilometers. That would compensate for the inferiority of our Air Force.
Egypt's chief of staff urged Sadat to stick to their own plan.
He said, "Okay, we'll draw up a plan to show to the Syrians." This second plan had us advancing to the Sinai passes, but it was done just for the Syrians.
So it was agreed that the Egyptians would advance to the passes. They would pause to reorganize and then go forward again. Meanwhile, we would occupy the Golan Heights.
Whatever plans the Egyptians adopted, first they would have to cross the Suez Canal, and do it under the gaze of Israeli troops.
The enemy are just 200 meters away. I can see them, they can see me. How can I catch them by surprise? I must hide my intentions.
We carried out many military exercises. The aim was to deceive Israeli intelligence. We wanted them to think we were expecting an attack from Israel.
Now, the presidents of Egypt and Syria also set out to deceive their fellow Arab, Jordan's King Hussein. They claimed Israel was about to attack them.
Sadat and Assad were worried about an attack on Syria that could have one of its hooks come through northern Jordan. In the final analysis, I assured them that as far as we were concerned, no one is going to use our country to attack anyone.
King Hussein smelled a rat. The last time Egypt and Syria had maneuvered him into a war with Israel, he had ended up losing a large slice of his kingdom. So he flew off alone, telling no one he was going to meet Golda Meir.
I was very concerned and worried that a state of no peace and no war was going to end us up in serious difficulty.
King Hussein talked about only one thing. He warned us to expect an attack from Syria and Egypt.
The Prime Minister received the king alone, but the head of Israeli military intelligence was listening, as Hussein warned of the Syrian-Egyptian preparations for war.
She was not convinced this information was reliable. You see, King Hussein himself was not 100% sure.
Instead of mobilizing the Israeli reserves, Golda Meir kept in place the usual 450 troops along the canal.
The attack was due on Saturday, October 6th. On the Friday, I went down and looked across the canal. On the other side, nothing was moving. I went back and told Sadat, "They can find out now. I don't care."
It was not till dawn the next day, as most Jews were preparing to go to synagogue for Yom Kippur, that Israeli intelligence finally became convinced that Egypt and Syria would attack within hours. The Israelis heard the call to arms on the radio and from rabbis in their synagogues. At 2 p.m., as civilians were reporting for duty, Egypt opened fire.
it was aimed as a limited operation. The land was not my aim at all. I wanted only to prove to the whole world that the Israeli theory of security would collapse, and we would cross the canal and we could capture the Barley flying. These were my aims.
Our troops crossed the canal. They were shouting, "God is great, God is great," and they planted the Egyptian flag on the Sinai itself.
About 6 o'clock, I told my people, my forces, felicitations. The Israelis has lost their balance.
Sadat's armies drove the Israelis from the Suez Canal. Israel's Air Force tried to retaliate, but failed to break through Egypt's missile cover.
I remember coming to the canal when I arrived in my division after 24 hours of going with our tanks across the desert on chains. I saw a young officer. He said, he looked at me, was like that. As he could not believe, he said, "We cannot stop them. We cannot stop them." Our forces, for the first time, suddenly felt that they cannot stop the Egyptians.
The morale was so high of everyone, even who lost his sight, even who was with amputated legs, but very happy that he has done something for his country.
The Egyptians advanced 8 miles into the Sinai and then stopped, as planned. In the north, Syria's attack also caught Israel off balance. 600 Syrian tanks rolled over Israel's defenses and across the Golan Heights.
We weren't ready today. We came from the home, in the middle of Yom Kippur.
So who was here? That was regular soldiers?
Yes, only the regulars.
So they must have had a hard time?
Oh yeah, very hard.
Did you have many casualties?
Well, with such things we don't know. We're not allowed to talk about them.
The Syrians were expected to press their advantage.
We must keep on fighting with all our courage, faith, and trust, as a nation that knows we're fighting for our lives. And we are fighting for our lives.